Good evening and welcome. I'm Shelley Palman. I'm glad you've chosen to spend the next 40 minutes listening to me about creating lasting wealth for you and your family. That choice alone shows that you're the kind of person that wants to take action rather than just hoping the universe will provide, because newsflash, it won't. Let's be honest, planning for retirement can feel insurmountable. But here's what I've learned after 10 years of being a financial coach. The gap between where you are now and where you want to be might not be as big as it seems. It just requires a tactical approach. Tonight, I want to cut through the noise around retirement. You might be wondering if you've started a little too late, or you might be feeling overwhelmed around how to make this all work. But the good news is you're in the right place. We're going to tackle the hard questions. How much do you actually need for retirement? What if you are behind the eight ball? And most importantly, what can you do to get started? So sit back, enjoy the presentation, and let's turn your worry into an action plan so you can start feeling confident about your retirement. So this is what we're going to cover off tonight. We want to get an understanding of what your best life might look like in retirement and how long you have to get there. We call this your runway. We want to build a clear plan so that you understand that you're tracking to where you need to be, whether or not you're working or about to enter into retirement and that pay packet's stopping. A scary time. We'll then cover off how you would access your investments, and we're going to talk about some estate planning essentials too. I have had some really cool questions come through already, and if you find that you have a burning question during the course of the presentation tonight, there is a Q&A box that should be at the top of your screen. You can pop a question into there and we should hopefully get some time to answer them at the end. So as always, tonight's presentation is just for general information. I don't know you and I don't know your situation in detail. So there's no substitute for coming along, talking to a qualified financial advisor and getting some tailored advice. So a little bit about me. I am a financial advisor. I'm a strategic coach at Enable Me. I've been doing this for 10 years. Feel like there's nothing I haven't seen. I'm also a property investor, and I say it as it is. When I think about my own wealth plan and retirement, for me, it's all about freedom and choice. I'm 44 years old. I have a wonderful partner, and together we have 5 kids. Yes, it's a very busy household. Financial freedom for us, it looks like having choices around the work that we do from a certain age. It also looks like being able to visit family in Europe for a couple of weeks at a time if we want to. And all going well, we're hoping to have grandchildren someday and be able to share time and spend time with them and just support our own children on their parenting journey. But none of that would be possible if we don't spend the time to get a plan, accumulate wealth over our working years, and have a clear wealth management plan for retirement. So yeah, we all do want a comfortable retirement. And when I ask people about this, often they'll say, I don't know, just the same as what I'm living now. But for a lot of people, their heads are in the sand about this, and they're just hoping that the universe will provide or that it will somehow all work out. And I'm here to tell you that it won't work out unless you get a plan. Let's not leave this for chance. So it's a bit of a brutal reality in New Zealand at the moment, where we have 56% of retirees feeling that they just have to compromise on life. You know, there's that reality that they can't do the things that they want to enjoy in retirement. And for me, that's so disappointing. You've spent so many years working really hard, and it just doesn't pan out to be the life that you actually wanted post-work. Scarily, 13% of retiree households at the moment have arrived at retirement with a mortgage. Unless we get more deliberate with our financial planning, this could actually look way worse for the next generation, actually, because pre-retirement, pre-retirees, half of them, they're feeling like they're not prepared. Only 34%, which means 66% of people don't think they can maintain their current lifestyle for 10 years plus, let alone the 25 that you might need in retirement. And 70% are just kind of, I guess, dealing with the reality that they feel they'll have to work past retirement age, and that's how they're going to get it sorted. To me, these statistics speak to a lack of preparedness for the next generation. So what can we do about this? Regardless of your number, your retirement number, the important thing is knowing that growing your wealth, it's all about creating choice and options. So options for what you can do in retirement in terms of hobbies or following a passion, options for where you might live and how you might live, options for possibly being able to help your children out financially. And for a lot of the younger generation, it's going to need to happen while they're young. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a client example a little bit later. Creating wealth in retirement or wealth for your retirement means that you can have a certain level of care if you need it during retirement. Or possibly it's about wanting to scale back on your hours and creating that option to retire early. I think with the working past retirement thing, or even the retiring early thing, sometimes there's a situation where you actually have to retire early, and that might be due to sickness. It might be due to, and this is very topical, job loss or redundancy or getting restructured out. Really hard when you're in your 60s to try and start again in terms of your career. So you could be quite negatively impacted in those latter working years. So sometimes it's about creating the choice to be able to retire early, but sometimes your hand is forced in that regard. So we want to be getting ahead of that. So you might be thinking the universe will provide. I don't think it will. And don't talk to me about lotto. We'll have that conversation if you come and see me. But perhaps you're just hoping for the best with your head firmly in the sand about all of this. And I think for a lot of us, retirement just seems so far away. I'm 44, and for me, it's about I've got a 15, 16-year plan. I want to create choices around work when I'm 60. But for so many people, it just seems way too far in the future. They can barely get scraped by even now. But the reality is the New Zealand super will likely not be enough. And for some people, that they have to be mortgage free by retirement. And if you're not, that creates a massive issue. So you might think, do you know what I'm going to do, Shelley? I'm just going to downsize my home. That's going to solve my retirement gap. I've actually run this through with people multiple times, and people tend to downsize, but not necessarily down price. If you've been living in a house and you've had that particular lifestyle in that house, it's going to be really, really hard to free up much capital to do that. So what we find is when people do free up capital, if they do, when they do a downsize, to be honest, it doesn't last them very long. One of the things that people often rely on, and I never build this into any of my financial plans for my clients, is inheritance. You might be sitting there thinking, yes, Shelley, but I will be getting some inheritance. But if your parents need care, you can watch that rip through your future inheritance. And sometimes you don't want to be in a position where you're sitting there waiting for them to die. So we're not relying on inheritance. We are taking the bull by the horns and sorting a retirement plan ourselves. New Zealand Super, if you're lucky enough to be able to get that, and your KiwiSaver are very unlikely to be enough. So we have to be smarter and we have to do better. And we've got to get our heads out of the sand. Because if you don't take action, and if you don't take action now, this comes at a cost. And to articulate the cost of inaction, for a lot of people, that looks like missing out on compound returns on investing. So if you're on the call tonight and you're not in KiwiSaver, get yourself into KiwiSaver. If you have the ability to start investing outside your KiwiSaver and you're mortgage free, get investing today, because you're missing out on compound interest if you don't. One of the other opportunity costs that I see very, very frequently is people just drifting along with their mortgage. So not paying your mortgage off faster, and you end up paying way too much interest to the bank. So compound interest on investing, you get the reverse with your table mortgage. So the compound interest means the bank wins. So not accelerating paying the mortgage off faster is a missed opportunity, and it's a cost of inaction. One of the other opportunity costs that I see very frequently is a missed wealth creation opportunity, such as leveraging. And I'm going to talk about leverage a little bit later in the presentation. The key message is start today, don't delay it, because that delay can cost you. So where do you start? Well, If you know what you're earning, and if you know what you're saving, or if you're not saving, the difference between those two things by default is your annual lifestyle cost. So, for ease of maths, if you are receiving as a household $100,000 in the door every year after tax, and say you're saving $10,000, then your annual lifestyle cost is $90,000. If part of that is a mortgage, you can deduct that off, and that's going to be your annual lifestyle cost in retirement if you want to live the same style of lifestyle that what you're living at the moment. Then we go, okay, if you retire like the typical person at age 65, although noting that could be earlier due to job loss or sickness, and we like to take our clients out to age 90. So from 65 to age 90, that's 25 years. So times your annual lifestyle costs, less your mortgage, by 25. And that's a really good start. This, of course, does assume that you're living in a mortgage-free home and that you have kids that are not putting downward pressure on you in retirement. When I first meet with clients, I talk about the 5 pillars of financial success, and that's a presentation for another time. But the 5th pillar of financial success is launching your children into adulthood so that they don't become a burden on you in retirement. So having financially independent children is a really, really important part of you guys being okay for retirement. One of the other things that people tend to forget about are those one-offs that crop up. So for me, that might look like a bigger holiday every 3 or 4 years to Europe in retirement. It might be that you need to replace your car, and in retirement, you might need to do 1 or 2 more car replacements, assuming you can continue driving. But also those things like if you're a homeowner, a house is always going to cost you money. Appliances are going to crap out. So there are going to be those extra one-off costs that come in that often people forget about. So it's not just 25 times your annual lifestyle cost, it's that, having a mortgage-free home, having financially independent children, and taking into account all those one-off costs that you might have to pay for over the course of the rest of your life. So that's how you can start to put together a rough calculation of what you might need. So what's the solution? What is the solution for a comfortable retirement? To me, it's getting a clear plan for accumulation while you're still working, and then another clear plan, a different plan for the decumulation of what you've managed to accumulate over your working years. In my mind, that's the solution to a comfortable retirement. What am I going to need? Let's get a plan to accumulate that. And then once you're there, let's get a clear plan to decumulate it or use it. For me, it's all about peace of mind so that you can enjoy yourself, live your best life in retirement, and not end up as the richest person in the graveyard. It's amazing the number of people that come to me and they hoard. They're so afraid of spending money. But when you get a clear decumulation plan, it gives you the confidence to go on that trip. It gives you the confidence to help your grandchild go to that sporting event overseas, and still know that you're going to be okay for retirement. So that plan is the key. So just like building a house, the start of any good plan, and an accumulation wealth plan or a retirement plan, it's always in securing the foundation. So we want you to have a strong foundation at all times, both pre and post retirement. For me, it's about getting good money habits. And when you get good money habits, or I call it having good money hygiene, it's a new phrase that I'm trying to coin. Having good money hygiene means having really good systems or that cash flow management piece, having good healthy money habits so you're really conscious around your spend. When you stop receiving your paycheck, you really want to know where your money's going. So why not practice before retirement on what you could live on in retirement and save the rest? So get good money habits. Really understand what your goals are. And if you're in a couple, sit down, talk about the future. What are you driving for here and how much is that going to cost? Yes, get really good systems around the way you operate your bank account structure. If you have short-term debt or if you have a mortgage, you've got to get that gone. And it's really, really, really important, particularly, well, both pre and post-retirement, to have good insurances in place. When you're still working, we want to be protecting yourself and your income. And when you're in retirement, you might choose to continue to have insurances, obviously, on your house, car, and contents, but also medical insurance to make sure you can get the medical care that you need when you need it. And having a really solid KiwiSaver strategy and making sure that your KiwiSaver is optimal is the last piece of the puzzle. So there's a few little boxes there that we want to tick to make sure we're laying the foundation for a successful retirement. So in addition to having a good foundation, we really need to take a good hard look at ourselves because often it's us who holds ourselves back, and the way we think about money and the way we behave around money. And there's so much that feeds into that, and it could be negative beliefs that your parents have kind of handed on to you. It could be a negative experience that you've had about it. It could just be a general lack of confidence around money because you don't know about it. One of the things I see quite frequently when I ask people what their biggest obstacles are around money that's stopping them from getting and achieving their goals, they blame external forces. I always growl at them for doing that. Are they blaming the external cost of living and the economic volatility, or is it just their lack of preparedness and lack of wanting to take accountability for their own situation? Conditions are never going to be perfect. Even if they were, it doesn't guarantee that you're actually going to get ahead. So be honest. What kind of messages are you telling yourself about why you aren't getting started on getting sorted for retirement? So I just wanted to give a generalized example to you of where many people might end up if they were to do nothing at all and just rely solely on their KiwiSaver. So a sad fact is that the average age for Kiwis to get on the property ladder is 35. And actually, recently in Auckland, it came out that it was 37. So people are taking a lot longer to get on the property ladder. And the average mortgage term is actually 30 years. So on the property ladder at 35 with your first home on a 30-year term, if you just follow the system, that doesn't really work. And what we're finding is that KiwiSaver just isn't enough. So you can see here on the graph, the blue line gets to age 65. All we've got is our KiwiSaver. That's the green line popping up, and we're going to run out of money really quickly. So we're talking about wealth creation and accumulation of wealth and investments and retirement. So you might be wondering why you're talking about mortgages now, Shelley. But in our view, having an accelerated plan to pay your mortgage off faster plays a really pivotal role in your wealth creation plan. Repaying your mortgage earlier than what the bank want you to do it, it increases the time frame that which you can build wealth for retirement. So we can see that on the next graph here. When you see in this example, if we could get you mortgage free 10 years earlier, ideally we're mortgage free before 55, ideally by 50, but let's say you get mortgage free in 20 years instead of 30 years. That buys us time to accumulate wealth, to make some more savings and to invest and grow those savings. So what you can see here in this example is the green line going up, and then that lasts us a little bit longer. But what we really want to make sure is having a really solid post-retirement wealth management strategy. And that means getting your money working as hard as it possibly can for you. Because when you think about it, you retire at age 65 and we want to have enough money to last us till we're about age 90 on a good day. So we want to make sure that the funds that we do have are invested appropriately so that the money compounds over that time. And actually, it's 25 years. So there is time for that money to compound and to grow so that we last you all the way out to age 90. So unfortunately, at the moment, for our 56 to 60-year-olds, so that's the cohort that are kind of probably starting to have a think about retirement, and I would be interested to know how many of you on the call tonight are in that age bracket. Unfortunately, we didn't get onto KiwiSaver until a little bit later. It just wasn't there as an option. So the average KiwiSaver balance for that age bracket is sadly only about $65,000. And I can tell you right now, that's probably only going to last about 1 or 2 years, depending on what you want to spend or how long you can make that stretch. But here are some numbers, and every couple of years, Massey University does some retirement expenditure research. And what they say is that if you're a single person, and you can just simply double this if you're in a couple, is that assuming you're in a mortgage-free home and don't have children that are a drain on you financially, your lifestyle costs are likely to be around about 40,000 per annum, not including bigger holidays, car replacements, bigger projects on the house, just operational spend. So if we times that 40,000 by 25 years, we get to 1 million. The pension contribution's 675, we still have a gap, 325,000. So depending on the problem that you're trying to solve and your retirement gap, we're going to need to take more risk the larger the problem that we're trying to solve. So you see how it starts with getting a clear personal financial plan before you understand your wealth plan. So as you can see in this graph, the higher the risk, the higher the return. It's the way it always works. It would be great if we could put our money in the bank and get a really good return, but that's not how it works. So for some people, they have a really low risk appetite, and for others, they have a really high tolerance for risk. But for some, it actually comes down to the problem we're trying to solve. Even if you have a low risk tolerance, you might need to take more risk because you have too much of a large retirement gap. So if your retirement gap is greater than 300,000, and when I say the gap, I mean after we've taken into account a mortgage-free home, your KiwiSaver, and whatever else you've managed to save, if there's still a gap of 300,000, you can't save your way out of that. We are going to need to use leverage to bridge that gap. It becomes our only option. And this is just a generalized example of how leverage works, but it's quite compelling because a lot of people don't understand this. Say you had 160,000 and you decided to invest it in a managed fund. At a 6% return, that would give you 9,600. If you took that same 160 and put that in as a 20% deposit on an $800,000 property at the same capital growth rate, that would give you a $48,000 return per year. Obviously, both managed funds and property have different trajectories in terms of the way that they grow. Shares do this and they go up and down. Property kind of flatlines for a while and then goes up, and flatlines for a while and then goes up. So you can't pick a certain time in the market. So this is just a generalized example and it's average returns over time. But you can see the clear difference of a $48,000 return versus a $9,600 return. And that's leverage and how powerful that can be. So there might be some of you that are listening tonight who have already invested in property, and you might even have a portfolio of properties. It's very common for people to come and see us and they've got multiple investment properties. One of the things I want to encourage you to do is to be what we would call an active holder of your properties. Should you sell the property and buy new, is there a risk of repairs and maintenance? Are you too clustered in one area and need to diversify your location? Or should you just keep what you've got and actually buy another one because we're still tracking for a shortfall? So really be an active holder, no matter what form of investment you have. So it could be property, or it could just be any other investment that you have. What's our plan here? Are these investments still serving us? If you have investment funds, what are the fees that you're paying? Are you in the right risk profile? And what are the returns that you're getting with that? And if you're really unsure, and if you have a managed fund or an investment fund, seek financial advice from someone who's independent. If you have money in the bank, I growl at people who just have money in the bank. Okay, if it's just for an emergency buffer, but anything over and above your emergency buffer, I'm sorry, but that money is going backwards. The cost of living is going up at a rate of 2.7% at the moment. So you are not getting 2.7% in the bank. Okay, if you had some term deposits that are kind of rolling off from a couple of years ago, but that was when inflation was running high. At the moment, money in the bank will not generate enough return to outpace the cost of living year on year. So keeping money in the bank is not an option. So how could you make it work harder for you? If you're sitting here tonight and you've got money in the bank and a mortgage, I'm sorry to say, but you're actually handing your money to the bank for them to lend it back to you at a higher margin. Let's pay it off our mortgage, shall we? If you've got money in the bank and you're mortgage free, let's look at an investment plan for that, and we just keep enough in the bank as a buffer. So, what are your options around decumulating your wealth? There are lots of different options. For some people, they want to build up enough capital to just live off the returns and not touch the capital. That might be driven by a desire to leave a legacy for children or family. For some, they withdraw a set amount or a percentage each year. And then there's that phased approach, which breaks down the investments into buckets for the short, medium, and long term. And the risk profile of each of those buckets is set accordingly. So there are phases to retirement. In the first 5 to 10 years, we're pretty active. We can do the traveling. The long haul flights have some appeal. We want any investment bucket for the first 5 to 10 years to be very low risk because we're needing to access that money. However, for the money that you're going to need in that kind of 10-year bracket, we can start to actually get a little bit more growth out of that and put that into a slightly higher risky category. And then for those final years, we can actually be looking to invest in growth assets for that bucket of your money because you're not going to need to access that money for quite some time. So we've got time for it to compound and grow. So you see how the phased approach, putting your investments into different buckets. And I think understanding what your needs are and what the cost is going to be for your needs in these different phases allows us to design and tailor what we put where into what buckets and what returns that we get. So for some of us, we want to give a legacy to our family, or we might want to gift while we're still alive. So I want to make sure that if you're doing that, that you include it in your wealth building plan. For some of our clients, that looks like they buy a property that gets sold and then distributed to their children at a certain point. We want to make sure that your gas mask is on first. And I think be really careful when you're having conversations with children or other family members about a proposed legacy or gift, because money can get ugly really quickly. For some of our clients, they turn to trusts so that they can protect the beneficiaries from marriages and things like that, or any possible marriage breakdowns. So there are a number of different legal documents that you can put in place when it comes to estate planning. The will is the key really to ensuring that your loved ones are looked after in the way you want them to be and that you can leave behind a legacy for your future generations. Sometimes people accidentally disinherit their children through changes in relationships. So updating and keeping your will updated can address that. I think the most important part of preparing your will is choosing the right person as your executor, someone you trust. A power of attorney, there are two. There's a power of attorney which gives someone power over your property, which includes finances. So there you would look to appoint someone who was fairly financially savvy. And there's another one that you can appoint for your personal care and well-being. So that would be decisions around the home that you might go into or any medical care that you might need. Estate planning can look like having a trust because the trust only distributes out through to the beneficiaries. And there's another document called an advance directive or a living will, which spells out your preferences around medical treatments or interventions. So getting the right documents in place and absolutely seeking legal advice around these documents, but getting them in place is really critical. So takeaways, key takeouts from tonight. I want you to understand how much you'll need and when you'll need it. Your retirement gap and the time frame that we have to mitigate for that gap, that shapes your wealth creation strategy. It's not set and forget. If you've got investments, make sure they're working as hard as you are. That's really critical, and beating inflation. Get clear on how you're going to manage your time and your money once the paychecks stop, because that can be a really scary time. And get the right legal setup, get the right advice, and get the right insurances in place to protect your future self and your plan. It's no use having a plan that falls over if you get sick. So how can Enable Me help? We start by diagnosing your starting point, which looks like assessing your current financial situation. And we look to identify the strengths and the weaknesses in your situation and your personalities. We help you to articulate clear financial goals, and we put numbers around those goals, whether or not you're in that accumulation of wealth phase or whether you're preparing for retirement. Think of it as like plotting your journey. Set the right course so that you can enjoy the ride without carrying any unresolved issues with you. We want to understand your natural spending and saving tendencies. That's part of that money personality piece. We want to find your financial surplus. Is there money going walkabout? Could we be saving and investing better? And we want to channel those savings effectively to improve that retirement trajectory. We then want to craft a tailored wealth plan that ensures that you can confidently prepare for retirement, and that critically that you understand that plan and that you understand the numbers around that plan, not that someone else is doing it for you. So that education piece is really important when you work with Enable Me. It's about empowering you to have the confidence to understand the plan and the numbers around the plan. And I think just being that sounding board, providing guidance, motivation throughout your journey, even when the going gets hard, because, life does happen. So, what is a financial consultation? Think of it as a financial health check, but for your future self. It's 90 minutes with a coach. We're going to assess whether or not you're tracking to have a gap or not, and get a clear personalized plan in place. If you book tonight, it's going to be $149 for that 90-minute session, which is a bargain. We normally charge $400 for those sessions. If you can't make it to book tonight, or you're watching the recording of this tomorrow, you will still get that discounted down to $249 for that initial session instead of $400. So it's a great session. So I do encourage you to come along. We have a wealth of coaches. If you can't get in to see me, we have an absolute breadth of experience. There will be a right fit for you in terms of coach if you can't see me. So I'm going to pop it on this screen. There is a QR code that you should be able to see on the screen. Book your consultation tonight. That will be discounted down to $149 for that 90-minute session. Do it for you. Do it for your future self. Now, we do have some questions, I believe, Amelia, some of which were sent before, and I'm not sure if any questions have come through, but we can start to work through the questions that came through before the session tonight. And if you guys have any more, pop them into the Q&A box.
Thanks, Shelley. Yes, we had some great questions that were submitted. Our first question is, how do you balance becoming mortgage free in your own home with property investment?
I like this question. And we talk about this with lots of our clients. And like I alluded to earlier, if you do still have a mortgage sitting there, but you're kind of on the clock in terms of that runway to retirement, we've got to address a mortgage attack plan. But lots of our clients have a mortgage attack plan, and then they do an investment property before they become mortgage free. It's just going to be a case of understanding your particular and individual strategy, and at what point you could do this without creating undue risk. So whoever asked this question, it would be really, really good for you to come and have a session with us so we can look at, let's get that mortgage payment done faster, and actually articulate the year that you could possibly leverage and do an investment property, balancing out not taking too much risk, and you're still going to track to being mortgage free quicker. So I would encourage you to come along and talk to us about that plan, because we're going to have to get quite strategic in that situation.
Our second question is, any advice on how to get your partner on board with budgeting and
Yeah.
investing?
Yeah, this is so common. And we always encourage people to come along to those initial consultations together, because if you're with somebody and you have a future with that same somebody, by default, you need to get a plan together. So I would start by sitting down, whether you pour a glass of wine or have a cup of tea, sit out on the deck. What are your goals? What are we shooting for here? Because if I'm honest with you, budgeting's kind of boring. Investing is great, and we have different investing strategies, but you do have to have a budget so you can figure out how much you can save to then invest, right? So for me, it's the goal setting and understanding what you're aiming for. It's the why that is needed first before understanding about putting together a budget and investing. What's your why? And I think if you can sit down with your partner and get that as a team, then at least you've got something to aim for, and we can start to build the plan from there.
Our third question is, I have some money invested in term deposits before the interest rate dropped.
Lucky
Any
you.
recommendations on where or what I can invest my money in once my term deposits have matured? I have no debt and am mortgage free.
Okay, so no debt, no short-term debt, no mortgage. My first thing would be, please don't leave it in the bank. I hope you got that message if you're watching this tonight and you asked that question. The first stop for you will be understanding whether or not you're on track. So doing that retirement number piece and figuring out if there's a problem we need to solve. Once we understand that, then we can determine the returns that are required on your money to ensure that it grows enough to serve your retirement needs. So it could be a managed fund, it could be, depending on age, even an investment property, or it could actually be a mix of the two. Often I've got clients with investment properties, they like the bricks and mortar, and they will have managed funds, and as well as their KiwiSaver. But it's important that we design your personal financial plan first before we can understand that investment strategy with your money. So come and see us for help on that.
Thanks, Shelley. That was the last question, so I'll
Okay.
hand it back to you to wrap up.
Lovely. So, if anything from tonight has sparked an interest in you, whether you're wondering if you're on track for retirement or you're worried that you're not, come in and see us and find out. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a good night.